I still remember the smell. Garlic, thyme, and something buttery, something warm. Not the scent of my home, but the scent of someone else's comfort. I froze in the doorway, briefcase still in my hand, heartbeat tightening as I listened. A woman's humming floated down the hall. Light, airy, familiar in the way strangers sometimes are, like you've heard them once in a grocery store but can't place the memory. Before continuing with the story, thank you for coming here. For more stories, please subscribe to the channel. And please mention where you listened to it in the comments. Thank you. I walked forward, slowly, every instinct in my body tightening. And then I saw her. A woman I had never seen before stood at my stove, wearing one of my aprons, cooking like she had keys, rent receipts, and a birth certificate tying her to the address. She turned casually, smiled at me, and said, "Oh, hi. You must be Madison." I didn't answer. I was too busy trying to process how, exactly, a stranger was sautéing vegetables in my pan. My husband, Ethan, appeared behind me almost on cue, hair messy, shirt wrinkled, the picture of someone who'd been home all day yet somehow had no idea what was happening. "There you are," he said, as though nothing was wrong. "Madison, could you, maybe try to be polite? You're staring." I turned to him so sharply my vision flickered. "Polite? There is a stranger cooking in our kitchen." He sighed, as if I were the unreasonable one. "This is Lila. She'll be staying with us for a little while." I didn't say anything at first. Partly because I didn't trust my voice. Partly because the brass key hanging from a hook on the wall, a key that hadn't been there this morning, caught my eye. A detail. Quiet, small, but important. I always notice the small things. It's what makes me good at my work. I walked closer, studying the key. "What's this?" Ethan shrugged. "Oh, that." I gave her a copy. "For convenience." The words "for convenience" hit harder than the presence of the stranger. "For whose convenience exactly?" I asked. Lila laughed lightly, stirring the pan again. "Oh, don't worry. I'm very tidy. I won't be in the way." The casualness of it, her tone, her posture, the way she acted like she belonged, lit something hot and sharp under my ribs. I turned back to Ethan. "And you didn't think to tell your wife that a woman would be living in our home?" He raised a hand, tired, dismissive. "She's going through something. I told you I wanted to help her. It's temporary. You never mentioned her name. Or that you were giving her a key. Or that I'd come home to this." "Madison," he muttered, "don't make a scene." That sentence did something to me. It sliced through the last of the shock and replaced it with clarity, a painful, burning clarity. The kind you get when you realize a mistake wasn't accidental. I took a slow breath. "How long is a little while?" He hesitated. Didn't look at me. That told me more than his eventual answer. "A few weeks." I studied him. "Is that what you told her, too?" Lila stiffened, just slightly. "Barely noticeable." But I noticed. Another detail. She said nothing. I stepped past them both, opened the fridge, and took out a chilled bottle of water. My hands were steady now. My mind sharper than it had been all day. If there's one thing my job taught me, saving corporations from messy internal politics, it's that the moment someone thinks they're outsmarting you is the moment you start winning. I leaned against the counter, opened the bottle, and took a sip. My eyes drifted again to the brass key on the wall. And right then, an unsettling question formed in my mind, quiet but precise. Why did a stranger feel so comfortable in my kitchen? And why did my husband look like he didn't want me here at all? I didn't show what I was thinking. I simply nodded once, slow and calm. "All right," I said softly. "Let's see how long this little arrangement lasts." I let my eyes rest on the key one more time. Because I already knew. It wasn't the last time that key would matter. Lila settled into my home with a confidence I couldn't chalk up to innocence. It wasn't just the cooking, or the humming, or the way she used my apron without asking. It was the small things, the rearranged spice jars, the dish towel folded differently, the chipped mug I kept for sentimental reasons suddenly sitting on the wrong shelf. Someone who felt temporary didn't reorganize a house. Someone who planned to stay did. Ethan kept insisting, "She's fragile right now. Don't question everything." But that was exactly what I was doing, quietly, methodically, the way I handled hostile takeover attempts at work. I didn't confront until I had every piece lined up like a closing argument. The brass key became my private lighthouse. A reminder. A signal. Every time I entered the kitchen, my eyes flicked toward it. Lila touched it constantly, turning it idly in her fingers as she brewed coffee, humming, smiling. People don't fidget with things that aren't theirs. Keys, especially. The first real hint came 2 nights after she moved in. I had worked late, intentionally, to avoid the awkward dinner dynamic. When I came home, the house was quiet except for the soft sound of Ethan and Lila talking behind the closed guest room door. Not intimate, but familiar. Too familiar. I didn't press my ear to the door. I'm not that woman. I simply stood there long enough to catch a few words through the thin wood. She doesn't have to know yet. My spine went cold. Yet. I walked away before I could hear more. I didn't need more. That single word was enough to reshape the entire situation. The next morning, I left early and drove to the office even though I didn't need to be there. I needed space to think. Space to pull apart what I knew and what I suspected. I sat at my desk, staring at my calendar, but my mind kept circling the same question. What was I not supposed to know yet? By noon, I had my first clue. My phone buzzed with a notification from our shared home security app, except it wasn't a live alert. It was a log. A timestamp. 3 days before Lila moved in, Ethan had disabled the kitchen camera. He claimed it was glitching. He never fixed it. I stared at the timestamp until the numbers blurred. Then I saved the log, emailed it to myself, and printed a hard copy for my personal office file. At home that evening, Lila was sitting on the couch with a throw blanket draped over her legs, flipping through a home magazine. A mug of tea, my chipped mug, sat beside her on the coffee table. I felt something coil tight inside my chest. She smiled brightly. "Hey, Madison. I made extra dinner if you're hungry." I walked into the kitchen, lifted the pot lid, and inhaled. It smelled good. Mocking good. Like she was writing herself into the rhythms of my home, my routines, my marriage. "Thanks," I said, and served myself exactly 1 spoonful. Control is a quiet weapon. Ethan came in behind me, looking exhausted. "Can we not do this tonight?" he whispered, as if I were staging an ambush. I sat at the table. "Do what?" He hesitated. The tension. I met his eyes. "Then end it. Tell me what's actually happening." His jaw tightened. "Nothing's happening." She needed a place to stay. And she needed a key? "For convenience," he repeated, voice firmer this time. But the way Lila's gaze flicked toward the brass key, just for a split second, told a different story. I ate my single spoonful of dinner, rinsed my dish, and headed to the bedroom. When I closed the door, I noticed something on my nightstand that hadn't been there earlier, the faded ticket stub from a concert Ethan and I went to on our first anniversary. I kept it tucked in the drawer, not out in the open. Someone, either careless or curious, had touched it. I put it back silently. The next morning, I woke early and checked the kitchen camera again out of habit. Still disabled. Another timestamp showed something else. Someone had opened the front door at 2:14 a.m. I hadn't heard anything. Ethan claimed he was asleep all night. Lila said she never left her room. But the log didn't lie. The door opened. And the key hanging from the wall was no longer there. At 8:30, I stood in the kitchen with my coffee, watching Lila walk in wearing my cardigan like it belonged on her. The brass key rested in her hand. She set it back on the hook without looking at me. Out for a walk? I asked. She blinked, surprised for half a second. I couldn't sleep. I nodded thoughtfully. So you left the house at 2:14 a.m.? Odd hour. Ethan rushed in immediately, as if summoned. Madison, come on. She's having a tough time. Funny, I said softly. She seems comfortable. His face tightened. Lila's eyes flickered again, guilt, annoyance, calculation. Something. She wasn't fragile. Not even close. But I didn't push further. Yet. Because last night, after seeing the timestamps, I'd gone through our lease agreement, something I hadn't looked at in years. And deep in the fine print, I found a clause I didn't remember signing. A clause that suddenly changed everything. Someone had plans. But they weren't the only one. I didn't confront them, not yet. When people think you're in the dark, they get sloppy. They talk too loudly behind doors. They leave things out they think you won't understand. They underestimate what you'll notice. And I notice everything. 2 mornings later, I made pancakes. Not because I wanted them, but because I wanted to watch what happened when I occupied the kitchen instead of Lila. I kept it simple: flour, eggs, milk, and my sea blue scarf tied around my hair to keep it out of the batter. That scarf had become something of a quiet anchor for me lately, soft, steady, a reminder that I was still here, still watching. Ethan walked in, surprised. You're cooking? Shocking, I know. I flipped a pancake with a calm I didn't feel. I live here. Before he could respond, Lila shuffled in wearing slippers she hadn't owned 3 days ago. She paused at the doorway, just a flicker, but I saw the territorial flash in her eyes. Like I'd taken her chair in a meeting. Oh, she said lightly. You're making breakfast today? Yes, I replied. Did you want some? She hesitated. I thought maybe I could. No, I said gently, almost warmly. Sit. Breakfast is on me. She sat slowly, watching me like I was a puzzle she'd expected to be simple but wasn't. Perfect. Ethan poured himself coffee and muttered something about leaving early for work, though he didn't leave. He lingered. Hovered. People hovered when they were nervous. I placed 2 pancakes in front of each of them. Then sat down with my own plate. We ate in silence until Lila burst with the kind of faux casual tone people use right before they overstep. So. Ethan and I were thinking of redecorating a bit, she said, too bright, too confident. My fork paused midair. Ethan coughed. It was just an idea. Redecorating? I asked, voice even. Nothing major, Lila said quickly. Just rearranging. Maybe repainting the dining room. Making the space feel more open. The space. Not your space. Not your family's home. Just the space. Claiming language. I smiled a little, small, sharp, deliberate. Who's paying for this redecorating? They both froze. And before either could answer, my phone buzzed on the table with a new email notification. Reflexively, I glanced at it. Lease agreement access, document viewed, 7:42 a.m. User, Ethan Parrish. My breath stilled. He was rereading the lease. He knew what I'd found. I flipped another pancake onto my plate, acting unfazed. Actually, I said casually, speaking of the house. I was going through our lease the other night. Ethan stiffened. Lila blinked. I continued calmly. Funny thing, I had forgotten there's a clause requiring the consent of all listed tenants before any additional occupant can stay here more than 72 hours. Silence. Beautiful, suffocating silence. Lila's voice came out first, tight, defensive. Well. Ethan said it was fine. Yes, I nodded. He said it. But his signature isn't the only one on the lease. I tapped my chest lightly. Mine is. Ethan's face filled with alarm. Madison, don't twist this into. Not twisting, I interrupted smoothly. Just stating the legal terms of our agreement. The one you apparently reread this morning. His eyes widened slightly, confirmation. Lila looked between us, her earlier confidence draining. I didn't know. I let the words hang in the air, then offered a polite smile. Of course you didn't. Why would you? It's not your lease. Her cheeks flushed. Good. A crack in her facade. After breakfast, they both scattered, Ethan pacing in the bedroom, Lila fake reading a magazine in the living room. I set about quietly cleaning the kitchen, every move deliberate. When I reached for the trash bin, my fingers brushed something unfamiliar crumpled inside. A small, folded receipt. I uncrumpled it slowly. Hardware store. One brass key cut. Date, 1 week before she moved in. Paid by, L. Harlan. Lila's full name. My pulse quickened, not with panic, but with the calm thrill of confirmation. So she didn't just show up needing help. She prepared. She made herself a key before Ethan ever claimed she needed a place. Before anyone told me anything. This wasn't an emergency landing. It was a planned arrival. I tucked the receipt into my blazer pocket. Later that afternoon, I pretended to take a nap but instead sat quietly in the bedroom with the door cracked, just enough to hear voices drifting from the living room. It's fine, Ethan whispered. She'll calm down. Lila whispered back, frantic. You didn't tell me she had to approve. You said she wouldn't fight this. I didn't think she'd look at the lease. I felt my lips curl in a slow, quiet smile. They thought I was the type of woman who didn't check documents. Meanwhile, my job revolved around them. Then Lila said something that made my stomach turn. You promised I could stay here until everything was sorted. You promised, Ethan. He promised. Not asked. Not suggested. Promised. My hand tightened on the edge of the duvet. The brass key on the wall. The 2:14 a.m. door opening. The disabled camera. The redecorating comment. A picture was forming, and it wasn't pretty. They weren't having an affair, no. That would have been almost predictable. This was something different. Something more insidious. A plan, a secret, involving my home, my space, my stability. And then another sentence drifted from the living room, quiet, trembling. If she finds out the real reason I'm here, Lila said, we're both finished. My heart stilled. The real reason? I stood up silently and retied my sea blue scarf with steady hands. They were right about one thing. If there was a truth they didn't want me to know, I absolutely would find it. And when I did, I wouldn't just defend my home. I'd end whatever they were plotting in a way neither of them could walk away from unscathed. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I lay still beside Ethan, breathing evenly, while my mind unfolded possibilities like a map I'd been studying for years. Every whisper I'd overheard fit into a pattern. Lila wasn't just here for a tough time. She was here for a reason. One Ethan knew, one he helped orchestrate, one he assumed I was too distracted, too trusting, too busy to catch. By dawn, I was done waiting. At 7:30, I dressed in a fitted navy blazer, tied my sea blue scarf with deliberate care, and gathered my things. When I stepped into the living room, Lila flinched a little, as if she'd been caught doing something she shouldn't. She was scrolling her phone too fast, a guilty tell if there ever was one. Ethan was in the kitchen making coffee, terrible coffee, the kind he makes when he's stressed. He looked at me the way people look at landmines. You're up early, he said. I have meetings, I replied calmly. I'll be back later. That was all. I left without giving them anything to react to. Because that morning, I wasn't going to the office. I was going to the leasing company. The property manager, a sharp woman named Ruth, pulled my file immediately. I knew her well, we'd spoken years ago during a renovation dispute with a neighbor. She remembered me, too. Always polite, she said. But thorough. I took that as a compliment. I need to confirm some details about our current lease, I said. She nodded and opened the digital record. Everything should be up to date. I leaned closer. Can you tell me when the last amendment was made? She clicked. And clicked again. Looks like 7 months ago. My stomach cooled. 7 months. Long before Lila's sudden crisis. Long before she supposedly needed a place to stay. Long before any of this began. What was amended? I asked quietly. She zoomed in. It appears your husband requested a clause be added regarding tenancy transition rights. My blood chilled. Transition rights? Yes. It stipulates that in the event one primary tenant vacates the property for any reason, the remaining tenant may designate a replacement tenant without rerunning a full application. My heartbeat skipped. A replacement tenant? That's right, she said. It's meant to make transition smoother. For example, if someone moves out unexpectedly. Unexpectedly. Vacates. Replaced. The implication hit me like a cold, heavy wave. And my signature? I asked. Is it on the amendment? Ruth scanned the document. No. Only his. Illegal without my consent. And who was the designated replacement tenant? I asked. She clicked again. A name appeared on the screen. Lila Harlan. My breath left my body. Not only did they plan for her to live there, they planned for her to replace me. Not as a wife. Not romantically. But legally. Functionally. Logistically. A clean swap. Like I was a removable fixture. Ruth frowned. Is something wrong? I forced a small smile. Not at all. You've been incredibly helpful. Thank you. I left the leasing office with steady steps but shaking hands. Not from fear. From clarity. This wasn't a love triangle. It wasn't about jealousy or betrayal in the romantic sense. It was exploitation. It was strategy. It was my own husband orchestrating a quiet attempt to dislodge me from the home I had helped pay for, the home I maintained, the home I cared about. And the worst part? He thought he was smart enough to get away with it. I drove home slowly, not because I needed time to think but because I needed to cool the fire in my chest. When I walked through the front door, I found the two of them sitting together at the dining table, whispering urgently. Both froze when they saw me. Madison, Ethan said, standing too fast, we were just talking, I finished. You do that a lot lately. Lila swallowed, her eyes darting to the brass key on the wall. I set my purse down and faced them fully. We need to talk. Lila's shoulders stiffened. Ethan stepped forward. Before you say anything. No, I said. Calm. Steady. You'll listen. That shut them both up. I walked slowly to the hook where the brass key hung. I tapped it once with my fingertip. A soft metallic click echoed in the room. One question, I said. Who added the transition clause to our lease? Ethan froze. Lila's lips parted in panic. I let the silence sit, heavy, suffocating. He finally whispered, Madison. I can explain. You can try. It wasn't meant how it looks. How does it look? I asked. Tell me. He swallowed hard. Lila needed stability. She was being evicted. We thought, just in case you left, you know how much stress you've been under, we thought, maybe the house could. Stop, I said sharply. Just stop. He closed his mouth. Lila looked like she was shrinking. I saw her name on the amendment, I continued. 7 months ago. 7 months, Ethan. She wasn't in crisis. She wasn't temporarily staying. She was planned. Slotted in. Like a replacement part. Like you were preparing for me to be gone. He looked sick. Lila's voice came out small. He said you wouldn't mind. I turned to her slowly. That I wouldn't mind you taking my legal place in my own home? He told me you travel a lot. That you're barely here. That you'd move out eventually. Travel a lot. Barely here. Move out eventually. I stared at Ethan. That's what you told her? He rubbed his forehead. I didn't say it like that. Then how? He didn't answer. That was answer enough. I straightened my blazer, adjusted my sea blue scarf, and picked up my purse again. You know what I do all day? I said quietly. I negotiate with men who think they're clever. Men who hide details. Men who think I won't read the fine print. Ethan flinched. You should have known better, I said. But you didn't. I walked to the bedroom door, then paused. And now, I added, I'm going to handle this the way I handle everything. Lila whispered, terrified, what does that mean? I turned to her. It means, I said calmly, that you're both about to find out exactly how slow I play when I want justice to land hard. I closed the bedroom door behind me. Not to hide. But to prepare. I didn't pack a suitcase. That would have looked like retreat, like surrender, like giving them exactly what they needed to activate that disgusting little transition clause. Instead, I stayed. I moved through my home with a composed precision that made both of them flinch whenever I entered a room. If they expected yelling, crying, begging, they didn't know me at all. Psychological pressure works best in silence. I spent the next 24 hours gathering what I needed. Not clothes. Not valuables. Proof. Timestamped logs from the security app. The hardware store receipt showing when Lila cut the brass key. Screenshots of the disabled camera. A copy of the lease amendment with only Ethan's signature. And a short video I recorded, standing just out of sight, of their whispered conversation about replacing me. I compiled everything into a neat, organized file. Labeled it House, Unauthorized Tenancy. Then I went about my life. The house felt like a stage by then, every room carrying tension like static electricity. Lila hovered nervously, trying to act like she had any authority here. Ethan lurked nearby, desperate to intercept whatever move he imagined I was planning. Dinner was the breaking point. I came home earlier than usual, intentionally, and found Lila again in my kitchen, chopping vegetables as if my counters belonged to her. She wasn't humming tonight, she looked too nervous for that. The brass key dangled on the hook behind her, a bright, brazen symbol of their plan. Ethan rushed in seconds after me. Madison, there's something we should talk about. Perfect, I said. Let's. They both tensed as I set my purse down, took a seat at the dining table, and folded my hands neatly like a boardroom executive ready to close a deal. Sit, I said. They did. First, I began, you should know I spoke with the leasing office. Lila's breath hitched. Ethan went chalk white. And second, I continued, I know exactly what the two of you planned 7 months ago. Madison, please, Ethan started. No. I let you talk enough. Now listen. The air was tight. Lila looked like she wanted to slip under the table and vanish. You tried to create a situation where I'd leave voluntarily, I said. You counted on stress. On me being too busy. On me not paying attention. You thought if you pushed hard enough, brought someone into my home, disrespected my space, changed the dynamic, I'd snap, leave, and you could quietly replace me with her. Lila whispered, it wasn't like that. Oh, it was exactly like that. I leaned forward slightly. You made a key a week before you came here. And you planned to stay permanently. You even talked about repainting. Her face flooded with panic. Ethan buried his face in his hands. It got out of control. I didn't mean for it to. You signed a fraudulent amendment to our lease, I said. That's controlled enough. He froze. And you gave her access to my home, without my consent, against the legal terms of our agreement, and with a plan to remove me from the tenancy. That's not kindness. That's not helping someone. That's coordinated displacement. Lila swallowed so hard I could hear it. I took a breath, slow, steady. And now I'll tell you what's going to happen. I opened my purse and set a single sheet of paper on the table. An official 24-hour notice to vacate for unauthorized occupancy. Legal. Clean. Ironclad. Lila's eyes darted across it, widening with every line. You can't kick me out, she whispered. I tilted my head. Lila, you were never legally here. In fact, your presence violates our lease. And given that I have documentation showing you cut a key before Ethan claimed you needed help, the property manager agreed your occupancy is unauthorized. Her breathing quickened. Where am I supposed to go? Anywhere but here, I said simply. She turned to Ethan in desperation. Say something. He looked at the notice, then at me. Madison, please. She has nowhere. So she can plan for strangers' homes, I cut in. She'll plan for her next one. Lila blinked at me, hurt, angry, exposed. But she didn't argue. She knew she couldn't. I wasn't done. As for you, I said, turning to Ethan, I'll be staying here. You will be staying with a friend for the next 3 nights. His head snapped up. What? This is my home too. No, I said, it's our home. And you broke the tenancy contract. According to the terms, I'm fully within my rights to ask you to vacate while the management investigates a violation. I slid a printed copy of the clause toward him. His face crumpled as he read. His voice shook. You went to them before talking to me? You brought someone into my home before talking to me, I replied evenly. Silence. You have until 10 a.m. tomorrow to move out temporarily, I said. Lila has 24 hours to leave permanently. Lila's voice cracked. You're ruining everything. No, I said, standing, I'm restoring everything. Ethan reached for my hand, desperate. Madison, please, can we talk about this? We can fix this. I slipped my hand away. I'm sure we'll talk. After you comply. I walked to the door, paused, and tapped the brass key with one finger. A clean, metallic note rang out. One more thing, I said without turning around. The cameras go back online tonight. I left them sitting there, stunned, cornered, exposed. But I wasn't celebrating. Not yet. Because the real justice required one final piece. The truth Lila had told Ethan in a whisper. If she finds out the real reason I'm here, we're both finished. I intended to find it. And finish them properly. The house was eerily quiet the next morning, the kind of quiet you only hear after a storm when everyone's too shaken to breathe wrong. Ethan had packed lightly, just a duffel bag, and hovered awkwardly by the door as if waiting for me to rescind everything. Lila wasn't visible, but I heard her moving around the guest room, frantic shuffling, rushed zippers, the occasional muffled sob. Guilt didn't touch me. Not after what they'd planned. Ethan cleared his throat. I'll check into a hotel, I guess. A friend would be cheaper, I said without looking up from the kitchen counter, where I was reviewing documents. He winced. Madison, I never wanted to hurt you. But you did, I replied, still calm. And not by accident. He stepped closer. I was trying to prevent financial disaster. That sentence, so unexpected, so poorly formed, made me look up. Explain, I said. He hesitated, rubbed the back of his neck, then finally exhaled. The real reason Lila needed a place, it wasn't emotional. It was legal. And financial. I kept my face still. She took out a private loan last year, he said. They're coming after her. She needed a stable address so she wouldn't be forced into default. If she defaulted, they'd come after anyone who signed as a guarantor. I studied him. And who guaranteed it? His silence answered the question. You, I said softly. He nodded once. She needed a real address so the lender wouldn't jump straight to asset seizure. She said if she could stay somewhere stable, show consistent residency, she'd get an extension. And you thought our home was the perfect hiding place. He swallowed hard. It wasn't hiding. It was buying time. For whom? I asked. Her? Or you? His face broke then, shame, fear, the slow collapse of a man who knows he has no right to sympathy. You didn't tell me, I said. Not about the loan. Not about the guarantor status. Not about the amendment you filed to replace me. You let me live under the same roof where you were planning my exit, all because you got yourself entangled in someone else's disaster. She was desperate, he whispered. So was I said. After you betrayed me. He opened his mouth, but I raised a hand. Don't. Just go. He left quietly, duffel bag over his shoulder, his posture deflated. As the door closed, Lila emerged from the hallway holding a small suitcase. Her eyes were red. You don't understand, she said. I wasn't trying to steal your life. No? I asked. What were you trying to steal? My home? My place on the lease? My stability? I just needed somewhere safe, she said. I didn't mean for it to get like this. Then why did you cut a key before you ever arrived? She froze. And why, I continued, did you disable the kitchen camera the night before you moved in? Her lips parted. Panic flickered. I stepped closer. You weren't planning to stay temporarily. You were planning to stay until the lender finished evaluating your address. You were hoping to anchor yourself here long enough to avoid consequences. She blinked hard. I just needed help. You needed to be honest, I said. Then I reached into my blazer and held up one last document, one she didn't expect. A letter. From the lender. Stamped with today's date and delivered electronically to Ethan's inbox. I had logged into our shared laptop earlier. He'd left his email open. The subject line said everything. Guarantor release approved, temporary extension granted. Lila's face drained of color. He's been released? Yes, I said. They approved an extension based on updated financial statements. Ethan is no longer liable. She clutched her suitcase harder. But that means, I finished, you don't need this address anymore. And you don't need him. Her breath caught. Not with grief, no. With furious realization. He promised he'd help me until the debt was cleared. Well, I said, it just got cleared enough for you to handle it on your own. Her hands trembled. So you're kicking us both out? I smiled faintly. You were never in. She let out a shaky breath, nodded, and walked toward the door without another word. She didn't slam it. She didn't look back. Good. I stood alone in my living room, the brass key still hanging on the hook. I reached up, took it down, and studied it. A symbol of intrusion. A weapon. A warning. Then I dropped it into a small evidence envelope and sealed it. It would stay there, filed away, documented, neutralized. Later that afternoon, I met with the property manager. I filed an official report about the unauthorized amendment. Ethan's signature alone was invalid. She initiated a full audit and assured me, you'll retain full tenancy rights. He will not. By evening, the locks had been rekeyed. My home was mine again. Ethan came back on the third night, as required, to talk. Not to negotiate. Not to explain. To understand the consequences. He stood in the doorway, unsure whether he was welcome. Madison, can we try to fix this? I looked at him, the man who'd once been my partner, who now stood on the wrong side of every boundary I had. No, I said. You don't get access to my home or my trust anymore. You broke both. He exhaled shakily. So this is it? This is accountability, I corrected. He nodded slowly. I guess. I deserved that. Yes, I said. You did. He left without another word. And for the first time in months, the house felt like it was breathing again. Quiet. Safe. Mine. I brewed myself tea, wrapped my sea blue scarf loosely around my shoulders, and sat by the window as dusk settled. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it arrives in paperwork, timestamps, and calm decisions. And sometimes the strongest thing a woman can do is simply reclaim her space and close the door behind her.